It's our pleasure. Right, hello everyone and welcome to our webinar Wednesday. My name is Kirstine Stephen and I'm an Assistive Technology and Additional Support Needs teacher here at Call Scotland. Delighted to be joined this afternoon by Joe Naraynsingh from Tobii Dynavox. I know that some of you may be expecting his colleague Kirsten, but Joe has kindly stepped in today. So Joe is an account manager at Tobii Dynavox and he's going to share with us today what it looks and feels like to incorporate AAC into play, and I know that this has been a really popular sign up. So today's session is being recorded and the recording link will follow today's webinar by email for those that are not able to join us live. I would ask that you please ensure that your mics remain muted throughout today's presentation, and if you don't wish to be in the recording, then please keep your camera off for now. If you wish to have live captions displayed throughout the webinar today, please go into your language and speech settings and turn this on, and you will also be able to view closed captions on our YouTube recording as well. The webinar today is going to run for approximately 20 minutes and then there'll be an opportunity for you to ask any questions. If things do come to mind while Joe is presenting, please just type them into the chat and we'll facilitate the Q&A at the end. I'll pass over to Joe now. Thanks, Joe.
Amazing, thank you. And thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone's well. My name is Joe. I am an account manager for Tobii Dynavox. Yeah, I am stepping in for somebody else today. But I'll run through these slides, but I'll also try and actually show you some of the stuff we're going to touch on in the slides in kind of a practical sense as we get towards the end, and I'd welcome any questions or comments on that. But excited to talk to you today about incorporating play into AAC. I've been with the company 10 years now, and I can honestly say that the most effective way I've seen success in terms of implementing AAC and introducing communication in AAC has definitely been around play, and especially play that the children or the individuals that we're working with find motivating. So yeah, excited to go through this with you. We're going to talk about some different types of play and then how we can model AAC and aided language through play. It's an important element for children, and it helps with their cognitive development and obviously social benefits as well in terms of building relationships. All children enjoy playing and get lots of benefit from it, and if we can tie AAC in with that, I find that it's a winning combination. So what is play? Play is a range of voluntary, intrinsically motivated activities associated with recreational pleasure and enjoyment. It's worth noting that all children do play differently. However, although there are different playing styles, which require different. Sorry, a bit of feedback there. Yeah, so there's lots of similarities across groups of children when it comes to play, but there are different playing styles, and those styles require different levels of support from communication partners and adults. So we'll look at some of the different playing styles for children with language disorders and intellectual disorders and those on the autism spectrum. It's worth noting a lot of them are similar across the board, so you'll see some of them repeated. But when we know what to expect when we spend time with individuals, what we can do is start to adapt to the level of support or the approach that we make to the interaction and how we're modelling our AAC. So why do we talk about it? Well, as I say, I've found that it's one of the most effective ways to introduce and implement AAC and get buy-in. But there are some challenges when it comes to introducing play with AAC. So 95% of parents said that children with multiple needs require support to find ways to play with their children. And children with multiple needs have significantly fewer opportunities to access play than their peers. So some of the challenges we find are that oftentimes play partners are affected by assumptions, fears, and stereotypes. Even simple fears like, engaging with the device or what to model are really common questions that we get at the start, for example. And a lot of that's due to the lack of, them seeing it modeled and how to do it, and a lack of personal experience. So one of the things we like to kind of introduce is keeping things simple at the start and not overcomplicating it. And we'll touch on some of those in the presentation. And a big one is oftentimes they're overwhelmed with other care duties, whether that's parents or staff within the classroom environment. There's lots going on, so it can often be overwhelming. So, how do we find time to do this or do it in an efficient way? As I mentioned at the start, we're going to look at children with language, intellectual disorders, and also those on the autism spectrum. And how to be a good playing partner for those individuals. A lot of these are similar across the board, but for those with language disorders, it's really important to use and repeat scripts or phrases that the child can use themselves. We, for instance, within our topics in our symbol communication software, TD Snap, is one of the reasons we have within every topic, we have scripts available in there, and I'll show you those. Another important one is giving them time to process when presented with verbal information and not overwhelming them with too much all at one time. And one of the ways that we can help with that is using simpler language that's easier to understand. We want to choose activities that give them more cognitive challenges than verbal and social ones initially, potentially. We want to be there through the full activity as the communication partner. And I find this is the most important one. And to be honest, I don't want to call it a mistake because it's kind of intuitive. I did it when I first started. Is what we want to do is be a commentator and not an interviewer. And what we mean by that is, rather than saying to the child, can you find this, or how would you do this, and kind of putting pressure on them, we want to keep the engagement fun and engaging and natural, and just be commenting on things that we're doing, as opposed to, as I say, kind of putting the onus on the communicator and asking them to do specific things. When I first introduce AAC, when I go into a school or I'm doing it with parents, often an instinct, the first thing they want to do is ask their child to find something. And as I say, I don't like calling it a mistake as such, but the most effective way to do it is, as I say, to kind of take the pressure off and just comment on things. And that does take some practice. So again, similar kind of things for those with intellectual disabilities, but we want to support their play by giving verbal instructions and also adding visual supports, which again is something we add into our topics in TD Snap. Again, we need to give time to process information. It often helps to make activities that are structured and where there are rule sets that can be understood, especially for things like helping with turn taking and things like that. And then for those on the autistic spectrum, we want to observe the kinds of objects and activities that they're motivated by and then join them in those activities. Again, we want to commentate and not interview or demand. Choose activities that they have the skills to engage in and master. And a key one here is focusing your attention and the comments to the objects or the activity that you're doing that they're interested in, and not so much, as I say, on putting it on the child directly. This is the most important factor I've found when it comes to using play with AAC, is that we want to make it as fun and engaging as possible. And the motivation is the key with this. What is this individual motivated by? What do they want to do? What might they want to communicate about? What's going to get them excited, essentially? We don't always know that. And what's interesting for the child might not be, what we were expecting them to be interested in. And different people will choose different activities. And we won't always know straight away. I've been in schools before where we've gone and done activities and some of the children just haven't engaged at all. And then when, it might be an hour into the session or even the next time I come back, all of a sudden they're getting involved and using a device to comment. And it's just because whatever we were doing previously, they weren't interested in. It wasn't motivating to them. And then we've managed to hit something that they were, and all of a sudden they're engaging. So how can we make early play accessible for everybody? People who communicate with AAC need to see and hear other people speaking in their modality. I'm sure you've heard this lots of times, but I'll repeat it for anyone who might not have. But if we're expecting people to speak with symbols or aided language, we have to model that to them. We kind of have to entrench the symbols in the activities that they're doing so they get the opportunity to learn them. Again, this is a really overused kind of analogy, but it works in that if I wanted to learn another language like Spanish, if I never heard anyone talk in Spanish but was then expected to speak it, it's just never going to happen. Whereas if everyone around me is talking in Spanish, or I go to Spain and I've constantly got people talking Spanish around me, it's going to be much easier for me to be able to pick that up and learn it, because the Spanish language is being modelled to me. And similarly with AAC, if we're just hearing one or two words a couple of times a day, it's we're not going to be able to learn it. So here's a quick visual on that, which again, I'm sure you've seen similar things before. But when a child's expected to be verbal, we're speaking to them from the moment they're born, giving them that spoken language, and it takes them, what, a year, 18 months before we get any spoken language out. But we've been modeling that spoken language to them all that time whilst they've not been saying anything. And if we're expecting someone to use AAC and we use the same kind of initiative, if we're doing a similar thing, it's just going to be confusing, because we're putting spoken language in and expecting a different modality out in terms of AAC and aided language. So ideally what we want to do as much as possible is to be introducing the AAC along with the spoken language whilst we're modeling and introducing a device, and then we can then expect AAC as an output. So for anyone who's not heard the term modeling before, it's essentially us touching the device or pointing to the symbol as we communicate with the individual, where we're expecting them to point to a symbol or to interact with a communication device, whether they're touching it, using a switch, or other access methods like eye gaze or a head mouse. So what is modeling? It's you as the communication partner using the communication system as you talk. We're not expecting a response from the individual whilst we're doing this either, especially initially. We're just putting that aided language in. As I say, bear in mind when we're speaking to a baby for 18 months, they're not saying anything back to us for that time, but we're still talking to them that whole time, and they're getting that language input. And by doing that, we're showing the communication aid user how to use their device, and we're using their AAC system to demonstrate how to engage with people, to have conversations, to comment, to request, to share feelings. And what modeling is not: demanding from the communication partner and demanding them to participate. And as I say, this is a really common one that we see. Can you find this word, or go to this, or point to that. We're not doing that. We're using the device and commenting on what we're doing as we're using it. So we're not prompting the communicator to point to, touch to, or interact with the symbols. We're just doing it without that expectation. And we're not asking the user to imitate or copy what you're doing. Another thing that we see quite often, which again it's not a criticism, it's just it's something that people do naturally initially, is someone might already have although they're non-verbal, they may have other ways that they communicate. So they might nod for yes, as an example, or point to something. And what we don't want to do is say, no, use your device to do that. They've communicated with us. They've used their model of communication to acknowledge something or to point to what they want. We don't then have to ask them to ask for it again or comment again by using this, by using the device, because we say so. We can just model that that's what they've chosen on the device and show them, oh, you said yes, or you want a biscuit or a snack, or whatever it might be. And hopefully that makes sense. If not, as I say, we've got time for questions at the end. So let's look at some of the activities that we can do and how we can start using AAC with this. I'm going to go through the slides, but as I say, I'll actually show you on some software, because I just think it makes more sense once you can see it live in action. But some examples, really basic early things you can do are things like peekaboo. And we can make that accessible by, we can record the sound like boo, I see you onto the device and onto a button, and then have that connected to the symbol or into a visual scene, so that it says it when it's interacted with. And whether we're pressing it or if the individual decides to interact with it, we're going to react the same way that you would if the child had said the word verbally. And model. We want to do this as much as possible, get the repetition in, so that they're able to learn it and learn the routines. Games like this are going to help with your language skills and social interactions. Sensory play is a really nice one. I often find another thing that people get overwhelmed with modeling is wanting to model every word or assuming that you have to, but you don't. We tend to advise people to model one word above where the individual's at currently. So if they're brand new to AAC, we'll just model one word at the start out of what we're saying, and if they're using one word back, then we might start modeling two. But at the start, you just want to choose a target word like more, and whatever activity we're doing, we're just going to model more. So we can model that word over and over again. This is why core words are important, as opposed to putting lots of nouns on a device initially, is that we can model the word more hundreds of times a day, if not more. Whatever activity that we're doing, we can model the word more. Whereas a word like snack, you might only use it a couple of times a day, so you're not going to get that same level of language input, and also it's not as useful of a word. But yeah, we want to model it as much as possible. Here's a quick video. This is a young boy he's only 18 months old, and he's just interacting with the eye gaze system, but you'll be able to hear his dad commenting on what's going on.
I'm not getting any volume. I'm not sure if
any
there's meant to be
sound.
some.
Can you maybe share again with sound, Joe?
Oh, sure.
Perfect, thanks.
Sorry about that, guys. Hopefully you can hear me now.
That's it. Good boy. Good boy. Yeah.
Yeah, so the dad there is just commenting on the activity, and what we'll often do is kind of either have a low-tech version of the AAC or switch the screen over and model one of the keywords, like that was good, or let's go, do more, that kind of thing. And again, benefits in terms of development are your social interactions. I find that's really key with this kind of stuff, is that just, the fact that they're engaging with that social interaction and having that back and forth is really beneficial for both the communication aid user and their communication partners. It allows for self-exploration, word exploration, and then we can, depending on the level someone's at, we could do stuff around numbers or colors, and that helps with language skills as well. Object play is another nice one, whether that's, building blocks or making cars go. We can have language ready around this, around core words, but also around the topic of building or transport or whatever. And so whilst we're doing this, we can have the AAC device accessible to the child throughout the activity. Again, even if they don't engage with it, we want it there, and we want to be using it and modeling to them whilst we're doing that activity, because then we can comment and model the vocabulary around what we're doing. So, here's an example of some, page that you might have open within your communication software, talking about the blue block or knocking it down. Similar kind of developmental benefits to what we mentioned before, your social interactions, interaction by yourself, self-exploration, learning words, academic skills around knowledge, numbers, colours, and your language skills. This is a really nice one, especially if someone really likes certain books. It's a really nice opportunity to model whilst you're reading to them or with them. So you can pick their favourite story, find or create vocabulary or visual scenes so that you can comment about the book. Integrate the book into the device. I'll show you this quickly in a second, but it's a nice option. We want to model certain words. So for instance, we've got free books that you can add into our software around your kind of initial core words like go and more, and every page has the word go on it. And so it gives you lots of opportunities to model the word go whilst you're reading. Similar developmental benefits. And then, there's lots of these kind of things. As I say, I'll fly through these so I can actually show you on the app. But things like role play can be fun. Music, things like stop and go and more are really good ones. And again, lots of people are really motivated by music. And again, you can integrate it into the device so that, from within your communication software, you can have music or music videos playing. Board games are another good one. especially for commenting. We've got some really nice topics around that. So yeah, things like being able to say you're cheating or it's my turn are quite nice ways to get involved. And a lot of communication software these days, for those that can't physically roll a dice, for instance, you can have the die come up on your communication aid and they can roll it that way if they're using eye gaze or something. So again, we can make these games inclusive, and again, similar developmental benefits. So yeah, play is how children learn about the world, and it's something they do naturally. So it's a really kind of natural way to start tying communication in with that, and building relationships and learning about things like initiating and commenting on things, as well as being able to model your core words. So yeah, that's it for the slides. Have I got time here? Sorry, just to spend a couple of minutes showing the showing it in action.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. So I'm just going to switch into TD Snap, which is our communication software. So a couple of things that we kind of touched on there. Sensory. So we're on core words at the minute, so we can model words like more and like. But if we go to topics, we've got topics in here around reading and around blocks and things. One of my favorites that I start with is bubbles. Really motivating activity. And one thing I like to show with this is, for us that are literate, we can read these, and I can say, let's play with bubbles. Are you hearing that, by the way?
No, I'm not.
Oh. Well, on here then, I'm not sure why that's not.
Somebody else is. No.
No?
No, I can't.
I'm not sure why, sorry. But anyway, just for time's sake, these are full phrases around the topic of playing with bubbles. So we've got, initiators and questions, comments, positive things to say, negative things to say. And us as the communication partner, we can read these, and I know that this says, let's play with bubbles, or look at that big one. But if you put yourself in the shoes of the communication aid user who's perhaps never seen these symbols before, they're not going to know what these all mean. So just to give you an example, preferences, style. If we just have the symbol on there, we wouldn't have a clue what they mean. And the only way we would know is by exploring them and pressing them, and hearing what they say. And then by doing that over time, we can start to learn how to use them. And so things like bubbles are a really powerful way to introduce play and modeling with topics like this, because it's a no-fail way of introducing it. Whatever the communication aid user presses on here is going to be relevant to the activity that we're doing, and we're going to be able to comment on it, respond to it, assign meaning to it, and model back to them. So for those nervous around modeling, this can be a really nice way to introduce it initially. As I mentioned before as well, we have these visual supports in all our topics. So things like visual timers. We mentioned there that sometimes having scripts around what we're doing can be helpful. So these are all available in our topics, whether you're reading or playing with blocks or whatever. A couple of other things to note. I mentioned the books. So here's an example of where you could have a book integrated in with your communication software. This would read it if you could hear it, but it's saying go, go, go. Go, go, lots of things can go, and we can hop into our core words and model the word go, and then back into our book. So again, we could either have a physical copy of a book and a communication aid, or we could have a physical copy of the book and low-tech communication. There's lots of ways of doing it, but a lot of communication softwares now have everything in the one place, making it easier to model and implement. You can also import your own books into a lot of communication software. So, I've put Very Hungry Caterpillar in here. So again, if it's a certain book that's really motivating for them, we can get those in there. And just lastly, we mentioned things like music. We can have things like, if that was in here, no. So these would just be their songs. And again, we can have those play. Oh, here we go, core word songs. So here's an example. YouTube have done a nice job because they can put PTS symbols in videos now. So things like this are where we've got a core word song.
Oh, I'm getting that sound.
Yeah.
I like to eat.
So hopefully you can see the core words popping up, the symbols.
Apples and banana.
And again, we've then got them here so we can model them. I like to eat. So hopefully that gives you some context in how we can implement this, and give some time for questions as well. But hopefully you guys found that helpful, and thank you for your time.
Great, thanks, Joe. That's super. I've been that interviewer as well.
Yeah.
And after a lot of search training, I definitely became more of a commentator, and that's something I'm quite conscious of now, because I know I've done that almost like interrogation.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, please pop them into the chat now. Somebody did just ask if your slides were going to be available afterwards. So I've said that we will have a recording being sent out. Somebody's asking there, how do you get the PCS symbols on YouTube?
Good question. I've never actually done it myself. I know a colleague who was involved in it though, so I can ask them. So if you're able to pass emails on, I can find out the answer and then let you know.
Why don't I put your contact details in the chat, and then they could give you a shout? Would that be okay?
Absolutely, yeah, and a bit of
I'll
kind of
do that.
shameless promotion from our side as well, in that we make the software that I showed you, TD Snap, which is available on Apple iPads or Windows. We make it free for professionals, so if you've not got access to it and you'd like it, we can get you set up for free. And we have a scheme called Snap for Schools, where schools can have access to it for free, so they can have all this on their interactive whiteboard in the classrooms for making modelling easier whilst playing. So if any schools are here and would like that, then email me and we can get that set up for free as well.
Oh, I'm sure you'll be taken up on that offer. One thing I was just going to ask there, do you have any free downloadable, like low-tech resources available, that anybody, if anybody was just thinking about getting started with play? I've always thought that core word boards and aided language boards are a great place to have around, great thing to have around the classroom to support the play.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if your classrooms get in touch, because we have big kind of core word printouts that I'd be able to send to you, but we also have printouts available for free through the website and also through mytobiedynavox.com, which if you've not signed up for, I'd recommend. There's some good stuff in there. It's also worth noting that whether you're a professional or not, in the App Store, there's a free version of TD Snap, which is the software I showed you. It doesn't speak unless we approve you as a professional or a school, and then you get the full version for free. But you can print from it for free. So you can literally just make your own low-tech boards on the free app and then print them from there as well. So yeah, there's quite a few options.
Brilliant. Oh, that's super. How would you modify over enthusiastic repetitive selection? So somebody saying more, I think was the...
Yeah, it's a tricky one, that, to be honest. I'm not a speech and language therapist, so Kirsten, who was going to do it, would give you a kind of more clinical answer than I would. And perhaps I'll ask her to comment in on there. I've heard different kind of opinions on it. Some people are saying it's if a child kept on saying something over and over again, it's not like we'd take their voice away. It's kind of a behavior that we would have to kind of work around in terms of modeling different behaviors, or perhaps adding some visual supports to help with it. There are things you can do within the settings on the software to help with that kind of stuff as well, or choosing what language is available in the moment so you can model specific things. So there's quite a few different ways I've seen it approached, but I wouldn't, as I say, I'm not a speech and language therapist, so I wouldn't want to kind of give any clinical advice, but we've got a team full of clinicians, so I can get clinical answers for you.
Great. Well, thanks very much for your time again today, Joe. Thanks everybody for joining us today. It was super. And we'll be back same time next week. We're going to be joined by Lindsay Miller, who is a primary school teacher, and she's looking at integrating iPads and AAC in her classroom. So
awesome.
Thanks everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.